Welcome to Modern Living. I'm Kathy Ireland. It goes without saying, but honeybees are incredibly valuable to our planet. Besides the liquid gold they produce, these pollinators play a vital role in the future of our agriculture. Natural Apiary was inspired by the love of honeybees and a desire to enrich our world. Founder and CEO James Bailey is here to share his latest beekeeping innovations. Welcome, James.
Thank you, Kathy.
James, can you please identify the biggest barrier in becoming a beekeeper?
The biggest barrier for most people is the natural fear of being stung. Who wants to be stung? I mean, it hurts, right?
It hurts,
yeah.
Yes.
And having been a beekeeper for many years, I can tell you now, a bee sting today hurts just as much as it did the first time. But this is the challenge we face. The more people we can help overcome this fear, the more people will be willing to take up beekeeping and love it, and not just for the honey, but for seeing nature in your own back garden. How awesome is that? And eating your own honey?
Oh, that's the best. So James, on a high level, can you please explain how Natural Apiary is helping people overcome this fear?
Yes, this is where we feel we can help. We know we're not the first company to make beekeeping suits. In fact, big brands have been making them for years. But what we bring to the table is something new and fascinating by removing that fear. And the way we've done this is that we went to the market and we bought every single beekeeping suit that's available. We then used them for full seasons in our own apiary, so we could see firsthand what worked and what were the consistent flaws across each of the suits that we sampled. We then took the very best aspects from each of those suits and combined them. And with the use of the latest technologies and textiles, we were able to create some new and unique beekeeping suits.
Well, we had the amazing opportunity to visit Natural Apiary in this Modern Living field report.
Bees are important for plants and crops because as much as 1/3 of everything we eat is pollinated by bees. From apples and pears to tomatoes and beans, pollinators play a vital role in our food industry and food production. They help not only by producing better yield, they also help in providing biodiversity, variety, and also a healthy ecosystem. I love being a beekeeper because you're not only rewarded by your own honey, you also get to spend quality time very close to nature. Tending honeybees is quite magical and fascinating to watch them coming in with pollen in all sorts of colors, and it's also quite nice to see a bee being born.
I got into beekeeping myself through my auntie and uncle who owned hives and needed a bit of help time to time. I kept coming back because of the amazing experience and it just being so fascinating how they've survived in the wild and keep on producing honey.
Everyone knows that bees, including wild bees, are under threat, and the main threats to them, the wild bees, are thought to be several. So habitat loss is probably the main one, through agricultural intensification. Trade in wild bees, because some are traded, leads to the spread of disease. And the third one, more controversially, but there is good evidence for it, is the threat from pesticides affecting wild bees. There are several things the public can do to help wild bees. One is if you have a garden, to plant bee-friendly flowers, and it's easy to find out what those are on the internet. Likewise, if you have a garden, follow some advice I find very easy to follow in the garden, which is don't be too tidy, because bees need places to nest as well as to forage, and they like to nest in the untidy corners of gardens and fields. The second thing is to support bee-friendly public spaces and farmland. The third thing would be to support wildlife organisations that promote invertebrate conservation, including that of bees. So, for example, Bug Life in the United Kingdom or the Xerces Society in the USA. So those are all simple things that the public can do to help wild bees.
James, will you please tell us about Natural Apiary and what you provide to your customers?
Natural Apiary is about improving the well-being of our planet. We believe in caring, and we do this by not only making our suits and our tools and equipment practical for the beekeeper to use, but we also take into consideration the welfare of the bee. And with manufacturing across the globe, and by focusing only on the core equipment, we're able to make the very best beekeeping equipment use of the most appropriate materials.
And would you mind explaining how you landed on this idea?
We see, my grandfather and my mother, they were keen beekeepers. And as a young boy, we used to keep bees in our back garden, and I would sit for hours watching the bees fly backwards and forwards. I was hooked. But it wasn't until some 20 years later, when we moved back to rural Norfolk and we started beekeeping once again, that we soon realized that beekeeping was branded for children, or it's just very dated. So we decided that we'd actually make our own beekeeping equipment, things that we wanted to use. But as you know, with manufacturing, you have to buy in units of thousands. So we decided to sell our remaining units on Amazon, and the results were amazing. So Natural Apiary wasn't born out of the desire for business or profit, but out of our own passion for beekeeping and the simple desire for something better. And being in touch with nature and being in one, I mean, it's such an incredible experience. And I really think that having bees in your back garden is the easiest and the most fascinating way of being in touch with nature.
And James, what was your mission from the beginning?
Well, beekeeping is becoming very popular again, with people wanting to, help nature and eat locally produced food. And that's our mission too. And what better way of doing it than keeping bees in your own back garden, seeing the impact in your own locality, and eating your own honey? I mean, that's pretty cool.
That's pretty good. Can you please talk about your passion for improving the well-being of our planet, and how is this connected to beekeeping?
Yes, we believe that helping our planet starts at home. Yes, industry and government, they do need to make changes, but we can make a huge impact doing small changes at home. And what a better way of doing it than keeping bees in your own back garden? And we do this from the point of view of conservation, pollination, and our simple love of bees.
The wild bees are essentially all the bees that aren't the honeybee. There are about maybe 10 species of honeybee worldwide, 2 of which are domesticated. It's estimated there are about 20,000 species of wild bee worldwide, most of which, and this is also a surprise to many people, are not social bees. They don't live in colonies, they live solitarily. So certainly tens of thousands of species of wild bee. Why they're important is essentially because they pollinate our wildflowers and crops for free. They don't have to be looked after like the honeybee. And the other thing is they can also pollinate some crops and wildflowers that honeybees, though they do visit them to pollinate, are perhaps less effective at pollinating. With the honeybee, the wild bees provide a sort of complete spectrum of pollination services to plants.
James, can you please tell us, is it true that bees have varying temperaments?
Oh yes.
Really?
Oh yes. In Europe we have lovely Italians. They're nice and they're gentle and they're perfect for the beginner beekeeper. I love and I personally use buckfast bees, and they were developed in 1920 in Buckfast Abbey, England. Now the reason I love these so much is because they are good honey producers and they have good hygiene, which prevents disease, and they're only moderately defensive. But here in the USA you have this huge problem of Africanized bees, also known as killer bees. And they're a hybrid of African honeybees and European honeybees. And they were first introduced in Brazil in 1950, really to try and increase honey production. But in 1957, 26 swarms were accidentally released and spread throughout Central America. And by 1985, they'd moved through to Northern America. Now, the problem you find with Africanized killer bees is that they defend their hives more defensively, with a higher proportion of defense bees. But what is really scary is that they can chase a human, a quarter of a mile, and they've killed livestock and some 1,000 people. This is the challenge that we faced, and we really wanted to make a suit that made you feel 100% safe, even around the angriest of bees. Now, with our standard suits, we've got a very clear and very tough veil, but we really wanted to improve on that, and this material took us a long time to source. Now, as you can see here, this mesh is super fine, and it's incredibly tough.
Oh, yes. That will protect you from a bee.
Oh, absolutely, yes.
Oh, that's wonderful. And this is your Max Protect suit?
Absolutely, yeah. This is what we use in most of our suits going forward. There's nothing worse than looking through a veil and all you can see is lines.
Right.
You can't see what
Right.
you're doing. And we wanted to remove that barrier so that when you're managing your hives, you can actually see what the individual bees are doing. So you know where they are, so you don't disturb them, and it gives you a lot more confidence when you're actually managing your hive and managing the bees.
Wonderful.
To avoid being stung, you should put your protective clothing before you go into the apiary and never remove it until you're well away from the hive you just disturbed. If you do get stung, and you probably will get stung a few times during your beekeeping career, the temptation is to remove the gear, but you should never do that because it's likely other bees will come and sting you too. The best thing to do is to remove the stinger as quickly as possible and then carry on. If you lose confidence, however, then walk away from the hive, and once you're clear from bees, then you can remove the protective clothing and look after your sting. Not all of us want to become beekeepers, but we can all do something to help pollinators to flourish, no matter if you live in the countryside or in the city. We can all do something. For example, we can cut our grass less often, and when we do, remove the cuttings. That will help plants to flower. If we have a bigger garden or a piece of land, we can leave patches to grow wild, and that will provide food sources as well as nesting place for other pollinators, such as butterflies. We can also be very aware of pesticides and try to avoid them whenever possible, especially when we have pollinators that are active or nesting.
James, would you mind explaining the role innovative textiles and latest technology play in your protective clothing?
Absolutely. If we look at our Zephyrus Protect suit, I'll just show you the materials we have here.
Oh, this is soft.
It's incredibly soft. And as you can see, there's 3 layers here. So you have 3 layers of protection.
Okay.
Now this first layer, this is a polycotton mesh. And we've used just enough polyester to be kind to the bees so their tiny little feet don't get caught in these fibres.
Oh, so the bees are not harmed?
The bees are not harmed, and they walk over this without any snares or catches.
Wow.
And I've found with regular suits that can happen quite often, especially when the suit has become quite worn. But in addition to this, there's also enough cotton in here to keep the suit natural and breathable. Now if you look at the little tiny holes here, they're small enough so that even the smallest of stinging insects can't get through, but they're large enough to allow enough air to flow through the suit to keep you cool and fresh.
Oh, this is wonderful. You've
Now
got
this-
3 layers here.
3 layers, yeah. And then on this second layer, here we have a lattice mesh. This gives you a good 4 to 5 mil gap between the 2 layers. And this layer is critical to design because it gives you that essential distance between you and the bee.
Right.
For a bee to be able to sting you, it must be able to make contact with your skin.
Right.
You see, a bee stinger protrudes between 1.3 and 3 millimeters. But here you have a good ½ centimeter gap, so the bee can't reach you to sting you. Now the third layer is another layer of polycotton mesh that gives the suit a breathable and durable lining.
Right. No, it's soft, it's comfortable,
And it's all natural. I mean, this is made of latex, which comes from plants. So everything here is as natural and environmentally friendly as possible. So we try to avoid, harsh materials and man-made materials wherever possible.
And can you please tell us how you generate new ideas for a natural apiary?
We're constantly trying to solve the problems that we face daily in managing our own apiary. And at the moment, we're trying out different materials for those all-elusive sting-proof gloves that have the same dexterity of bare hands. And as you can imagine, trying out all these new ideas, we get stung quite a lot. So the sooner we find a solution, the better. The better for us.
I was going to ask you what motivates you, but I'm wondering if it's not getting stung?
Not getting stung. Apart from not being stung, I love making new products and designing them. I take a lot of joy taking something from design and then through to manufacturing, and then seeing fellow beekeepers use and benefit from them in their own apiaries. I mean, what a pleasure.
That's wonderful. James, could you please tell our viewers where your protective clothing and beekeeping supplies can be found?
Yeah, I'm very proud to say that we don't only sell our beekeeping equipment through our own website, but intentionally through Amazon. I mean, Amazon has world-class logistics.
Sure.
And we also try to make every effort that all of our products are eligible for Amazon Prime. That way, all of our customers can benefit from their super fast delivery and, of course, Amazon's fantastic customer service.
Right. James, can you talk about your Zephyrus Protect suit and the thoughts that led to its creation?
Absolutely. The design brief for that was to not only make the safest suit on the market, but to make a suit that made you feel cool and refreshed, even on these hot, scorching days that reach 100 degrees Fahrenheit, just like the ones you have in Arizona.
Right.
Now, Zephyr means a soft, gentle breeze from the west wind, and it also means a light piece of clothing. Now, Zephyros was the Greek god of the west wind, and he's also the god of spring which happens to be the beginning of the beekeeping season. So what better when managing your hive by being protected by God in a suit designed to keep you cool and fresh?
Pollinators are in decline, and evidence suggests they are less abundant and widespread than they were 50 years ago. A deep decline in pollination systems would have a big impact, both ecological and economic. For example, the erratic weather patterns that we see by climate change. They cause seasons to become more variable, and it's this mismatch that has an effect on bees. So if we have a warm day during the middle of the winter, a queen bee might emerge from hibernation, and she'll look for food and fail to do so because the right flowers won't be in bloom. That will mean her reserves will be depleted, and that hive might not survive until spring.
James, would you please leave us with an impression of your vision for Natural Apiary's future?
Yes, Natural Apiary for us is about continually promoting the health of bees and protecting our planet for future generations.
Well, James, this has been absolutely fascinating, and it certainly appears that Natural Apiary is providing resources for beekeepers that are beautifully designed, simple to use, and environmentally friendly. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
And congratulations
It's been an awesome experience. Thank you.
Thank you. For Modern Living, I'm Kathy Ireland. Thank you for watching.